Hey folks, Piano Man Steve Lungrin here, and today we're going to talk just a little bit about the effective use of your transposition function on your keyboard or synthesizer. I know it seems to some of you like, well, why do we need to even talk about this? Don't you just hit the button and it goes down or up? You're correct, it does, but there is some strategy involved, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I had a few people over the last couple months actually ask me if I had a strategy, and I do. I never thought much about it, so I thought, hey, why don't we put this up and make it a little freebie. So in just a moment I'm going to put the camera over the top of the piano here so you can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the things I think about when I'm going to use the transposition function. I'll see you there. It's kind of exciting and fun stuff. Talk to you soon. Okay, well, like I said, this isn't going to be a long video, but I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about why you would use the transposition key and some strategies if that's the case. If you're doing it, how do you do it effectively? Well, the first and most kind of obvious reason to use the transposition function on your keyboard is because your voice isn't as high as the person who recorded it, and so you can't sing it in the same key that they did, and you've already learned it in a different key. Good example for me is Piano Man by Billy Joel. I play it at almost every gig, and I have for 23 years. I'm a baritone. Billy Joel was a tenor. That's just how it is. Now, he's actually using the transposition function on his digital grands these days, but for a long time he played it in C, and that's just because that's what his voice was. That's where he was. I don't have that voice. I cannot stand snobby, cork-sniffing musicians who think that you're a cheater if you do it in a different key. It's a bunch of crap. The artist would have done it in a different key if their voice didn't allow for them to do it in the key that they did. So don't ever let some schmuck tell you that and have it ruin it for you, you know? If it's better for your voice and better for your musical experience, drop it a key. Who cares? I like to do it in B flat. Now, is this because, do I use the transposition key because I'm incapable of playing it in B flat naturally? Of course not. I can do it. It's here. This is what it normally looks like. And in B flat it's even the solo, I haven't taken the time to learn it in B flat, but it's, it looks like this normally. And if I took a half an hour or whatever, I could probably just, it'd be something like. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? But I don't want to take the time to learn it. I already learned it once. I want to move on to something else. And I never play a gig ever at an acoustic grand. If I did play at an acoustic grand, I'd play it in B flat naturally, and when I got to the solo, I'd improvise something. But for the most part, I'm playing on keyboards. I have the right to move the key down. I already have it learned. Why bother? That's my thing. If you find it fun to learn how to play it in a different key naturally, I mean, heck, go for it, because that's what it's all about. But for me, it feels like a waste of my time, because when you do what I do for a living, quantity matters. I'd be better off to take the time I was learning something I already know how to play in a different key and learn a different song. So I don't take the time. That's one thing. Your voice is too low, you move it down. Or your voice is too high for the key it was in. When I do Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash, when I first get out of bed in the morning, I can do it in G, which is here. And it's love is a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring. And it gets down there. I've been into a ring of fire, you know. But when I've done a gig, when I'm 2 hours into a 4-hour engagement and my throat is all, you know, kind of beat up, it's harder for me to have resonance clear down on ring. So that's one where I actually use the transposition key and I move it up so that I'm actually in the key of A. Okay, so I still want to play it in G because I've learned it in G and I don't want to waste my time learning something I already know. I certainly could play it in A, but there we go, it's up. And in concert, I have no problem at any point, no matter how much singing I've done, to go, I fell into a ring of fire. So I use it both ways. I don't always just cheat because my voice isn't high enough. Sometimes I cheat because it's not low enough to get the desired effect in the context of a show. And there's something else to keep in mind too if you're playing gigs. It's very, very tempting because we all have such big egos in this business. It's really tempting as a singer to always want to do a song in a key that you know you're capable of. But there are many times when I drop something a half step or even a whole step from what I know I'm capable of at my best, simply because if I'm playing for 4 hours, I can't reliably, for instance, this note, G, which would be, say, the high note in Piano Man. We said, son, can you play me a memory? That whole thing. I just used my falsetto there, but you know, at any given time, I could probably hit it there just fine, full voice. But that's a tough note for me to come back to over and over and over through the course of the night. That's why I adjust it down so that F is my high note. Sometimes you have to think about the overall picture. And when I set my keys up, everyone's always asking, because almost everything I've got on YouTube, I use the transposition key. Not everything, but most of them. And people are always like, how do you decide? And I always have a process. First, I take my range, which I know very well. If you don't know your range, then there's a couple of things you can do to test it. What's the highest note you can sing really loud? You know, not in your phony high voice, but in your real that voice, you know. Go up as high as you can. What starts to really be a strain? Okay, where do you feel most comfortable? In your falsetto range, where does it feel comfortable to sing it? When does it start to feel too low to use it? Then start listening to your favorite artists and try to notice when there's a lot of intensity in their voice and when there's a lot of softness in their voice, and find out kind of what their range is. For people that I play a lot of music by, I'm always trying to find out what their range is. And then I choose the key of the song by putting the high notes in the song in the same place in my voice range that it is in their vocal range. So in other words, Billy Joel, in his prime, was real comfortable hitting a G, and then would also go up and hit an A, not as often, but fairly often. I'm far more comfortable with my regular high notes in F with the occasional G. So when we do You May Be Right, it was originally recorded here. Most of the song I'd be fine, you know. Friday night I crashed your party. Saturday I said I'm sorry. Nothing wrong there, but when it goes, you may be right, I may be crazy. And then he goes, ow, but it just, that high note, it's just a little bit out of my range. You know, it's a little bit out of my range. A note below that and I can really, you know, nail it. I can go, so it puts the whole song a little bit lower, but when the time comes I go, you may be right, and I may be crazy. But it just may be a lunatic you're looking for. Audiences don't notice that I'm down a key, and the reason that they don't notice that something's off is because I'm singing it in the same place in my voice that Billy Joel was singing it in his voice. That's a big way that I gauge whether to transpose up or down. So that's just something to keep in mind. You want it to be, if it's on the high end of the artist's range, make sure it's in the high end of your range. If it's in the low end of their range, make sure it's in the low end of your range. But you don't want to do a song like You May Be Right if you're trying to capture the original feel. I mean, if you're doing your own arrangement of it and you want to change the ambiance completely, that's up to you. But if you're trying to capture the original feel and it was originally here, you don't want to drop it down here and be like, Friday night I crashed your party, Saturday I said I'm sorry. You may be right, I may be crazy, oh, but it just may be lunatic you're looking for. I mean, that's terrible. See, but it's only because it's too easy for me to hit the note where I go, oh, buddy. That needs to be like, if you listen to the way Billy Joel does it, he goes, ow, you know. It's as if it's the highest thing he could possibly hit. And he had to scream it at the top of his lungs. That's what I try to do, is I figure out where were they in their range and how do I put it in the same place in my range. Now, there's another thing, another good example of where you might use your transposition key is not really to accommodate your singing voice, but rather to accommodate your playing. A good example of this for me is the song Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond. I sing it in the same key that Neil Diamond did. It was originally recorded in the key of B. It starts out on an F sharp 7 thing, and it's like... right there. I can't begin to knowing, but then I know it's growing strong. So, you know, my voice and Neil Diamond's voice have very, very similar ranges, so I don't ever really transpose any of his songs, hardly ever. But what I do, for sure, I'm a piano player. I like to put piano flourishes in. The key of B is kind of a stinker to play in. I can, as you just saw, it's not a problem. But I have lots and lots of fun fills and licks that I can do in a key like C or F or G that, you know, maybe I could do in B if I practiced hard enough. But sometimes what you'll learn on the piano is that some keys... You know, for instance, C, where you're using, you know, where it's based on a scale of all white keys, your fingers, you know, the patterns work well. If you're going to do this, you can't just use that same pattern in F sharp or B and have it work, because you're, now all of a sudden you have, you know, it doesn't work as well. Some patterns are not designed for keys that are built on scales with lots of black keys. You know, they need different patterns. So I have a nice arsenal of stuff that I can use if I'm playing in C or G or F or even D or A, for example. But B, F sharp, A flat, D flat, E flat, those keys are... I mean, I'm fine just pounding the chords out and the rhythm patterns, but if I want to have much flourish, then they kind of stink for me to do that with. They require an awful lot of practice. And as I said, I don't like to spend too much time practicing. I'm an entertainer at heart, so I'm trying to give my attention to the audience. I don't want to be concentrating too hard on whether I'm hitting the right notes. I want that to be like automatic in the can, because I want to be engaged with the crowd, giving them my eye contact, smiling and laughing and maybe improvising some funny words or something like that. So what I do with Sweet Caroline is actually transpose down a half step, so that I can play in C, but it comes out in B. but I'm singing in the same key. I don't know if that makes sense, but again, the song was recorded in B. We do it in B. I play it in C and transpose it down just because it's so much easier, and that way throughout the thing I can be like, where it began, I can't begin to knowing, but then I know it's growing strong. I was in the spring. And in all the years that I've been doing this, like I said, over 20 years of performing, I have not yet once ever had an audience member come up and check to see if I was playing, see what key I was playing the song in. No one ever does that. They don't care. What they care is how it sounds. And for me, with far less effort, with far less concentration, so that I have more of my focus available to being a good entertainer for the audience, I can do lots of cool stuff in C because it's really under my fingers. So that's another reason I use the transposition key sometimes, is just to play it in an easier key than maybe it was recorded. Chicago has a song called Will You Still Love Me, for example, that if I were playing it, I've played that in groups before. It was originally recorded in D flat, and we had a high vocalist, so my job was just to play the piano part. It was recorded in C sharp or D flat, and it looked like this. It's alright. I don't mind playing it there, but I used to just transpose up a half step and then play it in C. Point is, it just made it 10,000 times easier. And then when I had to come in and sing harmony parts or whatever, I could really keep my focus again on engaging the audience and on the other things that I had going on, and I wasn't just constantly looking down to make sure that I played the right note. I don't think that makes for a great experience live. So I'm not here to tell you that you should use the transposition key. I'm just here to tell you that there are times when it's a very effective tool, and there are strategies that you want to use with it. And for me, if you're doing it to accommodate your singing voice, the thing is, what you want to do is you want to use your range the same way that the artist was using their range. And then finally, one last thing that you might want to keep in mind. If you'd go down farther than, say, a minor or a major third, or up more than a minor or a major third, you might need to change the inversions of the chords that you're playing. And the reason I say that is, so let's say that we're playing, let's say that we're playing Piano Man. If you went down an entire, like we're in C, if you went down a perfect fourth, clear down to the key of G, and just played it exactly the same way, listen to how muddy it is because you're so low all of a sudden. I don't know that playing it up an octave is necessarily either the right thing to do. Although I like that better than I like the one that we just did. You're far enough away from the original key that it's, it gets pretty muddy if you just play it down here. So you can either jump an octave up if you get below, if you're going down more than say a third, you might want to play it up an octave, or if you know your chords really well, you can play different inversions. This is where we've been, but I can play this chord here and it can be like this. Why would you do that? Well, I'll show you. I already showed you that when we're in the key of C and we're playing that song, we're right here, okay? So it looks to me like our right hand is playing notes between, say, here and there. If we change the inversion, if we were playing it in G, then if we change the inversion, we're in that same basic parameter on the keyboard. See? Whereas if we play it in the same inversion that we played the C chords, it's just awfully low. That's all I'm saying. So those are things you can think about. If you know your chords well enough, you might shift the inversions around if your transposition gets beyond maybe, you know, like I say, a whole step or a minor third. Or you can maybe jump it an octave, but most of the time a whole step will get the job done, and I've got a pretty low voice, so I would guess that that'll be similar for you. But there's just, you know, I just want to impress upon you that this is a tool. It is something that is available to us, and don't get bogged down by the garbage that you will hear. I mean, I get criticized by this by the jerks on YouTube every day. And seriously, I don't mean to be coarse, but I just tell them to kiss my ass because it's stupid. They have this idea in their head that in the old days, people had to learn how to play things in the key that was right. But if you think that Marvin Gaye or any of those people wouldn't have gladly used the transposition key had it been available, you're nuts. They would have loved it. They would have loved it. They had no concept that you could do that. But in their day, for one thing, they didn't get to play on digital stuff that was in perfect tune all the time. So you had to bring a piano tuner to every gig. And then by the time they got done tuning it, it was out of tune halfway through the concert from banging on it so hard. You had to tune electric pianos. That was a big pain. Everything about doing this job in those days was a pain in the butt. It really was. They would have loved this technology. They would have absolutely loved it. Now, they don't necessarily praise it today because they're all like, you know, 60 and 70 years old, and they talk about this kind of music technology the way my parents talk about Microsoft Word. Boy, it was sure easy when you had a typewriter and you could just... But the truth is, underneath it all, my parents love Microsoft Word. It's just more complicated for them to figure out how to work. So don't kid yourself for a second. When they were in their prime, if this stuff had been available, they'd have jumped all over it because it's a great tool. It's available to you. So use it to your advantage. Music should be fun. And it is not fun for me to try and sing New York State of Mind in a key that's too high for me. So if I'm going, some folks like to get away, take a holiday from the neighborhood. That's not even the high part. And then I have to go, hop a flight to Miami Beach or to Hollywood. You know, I mean, maybe around the house I'll do that, but I'm not going to go out in front of an audience and try that. It's too high for me. It feels great in B flat or even A, but it's no fun for me to have to play it in B flat or A. I want to play it in C where I've learned all the nuances, and I don't want to take the time to learn it, to learn all the nuances in 2 or 3 different other keys. So I use the transposition key and... Sorry, I was just going, but see, I can go off on tangents, and see, I don't know it well enough. I'm not a good enough improviser in A and B flat to do the same thing, but I can have some fun with it, and then when it's time for me to sing, I can be, some folks like to get away, take a holiday from the neighborhood, hop a flight to Miami Beach or to Hollywood. I'm taking a Greyhound down the Hudson River line. I'm in a New York state of mind. So, you know, and that feels good to me singing, and it's a good key. It's a good key for my voice. So, anyway, that's the transposer. In your keyboard, it might be called key change, it might be called transposition, might be called transposer, could be called modulator, but it's a tool. So use it. You know, use it, enjoy it. It's there for you. And like I say, Billy Joel is using it now in concert because he feels the same way. I've already learned these songs. I wrote them. I don't want to have to learn all my stuff in a different key, but I don't have the voice that I had when I was 28. It's not a bad voice that I have now, but it's not the same voice. Things change. So, you know, go with it. For whatever your reasons, whatever your motivations are, go with it, use it. Just understand that if you get below maybe, say, 2 or 3 half steps below your original key, you might either have to jump an octave or start fooling around with the chord inversions, or else it's going to be pretty low and muddy. So, okay, I think I've gone on long enough. I hope that this hasn't left you more confused, but maybe given you some food for thought on how to effectively use this. I know that it's an important part of what I do, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. Not in the least bit. Which is why I continue to ignore or insult back the people who come after me about it on YouTube, because I really don't care. I learned a long time ago that there's a lot more contentment and money in impressing audiences than there are in impressing other musicians. So, anyway. I hope you have a really good day. I hope this adds to your toolkit of knowledge for playing music. And again, I'm really very flattered and honored that you're allowing me to play some part in your musical journey. It really, really is a privilege for me. So thanks a lot. I appreciate all you've done for me and all you continue to do, and I will keep trying to share whatever, for lack of a better word, wisdom that I have with you. And as always, you know where to find me. Contact me through my website, pianomansteve.com, if you have suggestions on little tips like this that I can hand out, because that's where this one came from. Alright, if you're not having fun when you're making music, you're doing it wrong, and I'll see you on the next video. Happy playing, guys. Bye-bye.